Let's get fun this morning, kids. Welcome to Oh Really, the session where you get to hear my unfiltered thoughts on certain things. So, surfing through Twitter is oftentimes just like wrought with all kinds of insanity. But the one thing that I saw that was just the dumbest thing I've ever heard, okay, was the thought that a president in the United States could be a dictator. Now, here's the thing. And this goes to a certain level of stupidity on both the left and the right, because we've heard the same thing from the right too. Back when Obama was president, there were certain fringe factions of the right that were saying he's going to be a dictator, he's going to strip away all our rights, yada yada yada. It didn't happen then. It's not going to happen this time. It'll never happen, and I'll show you why it'll never happen. Skimping past the whole impeachment thing, skipping past the fact that the Secret Service is also tasked with forcibly removing a president when he's been impeached or does something really friggin' bad, skipping past a couple other simple facts of life that people like to throw away because of political expedience, basically. Let's look at the numbers, shall we? 20,000 participants on January 6th, roughly, was enough to make the Secret Service, Capitol Police, and every politician in the building basically wet themselves and run away and fan people into the building. Make them run and hide. Alright? And then fan people in the building where you had a mixture of people vandalizing property and others who were basically just there taking pictures of a building that they've never been in before. The ones taking pictures, by the way, I don't think they should see a single day of jail time, but that's just my opinion. The ones doing property damage of any sort or nature or being intimidating or threatening in any shape or form should absolutely see some sort of trespassing charge at a minimum. That's where I stand on that, by the way. I think that the rest should just be treated like tourists, but issued a warning that the next time they want to come see the Capitol building or whatever, they should really schedule an appointment or however the process is for that. Yeah, because, and let's be honest for a hot second, if you're there as a tourist, you're usually better off not being there when there's a riot going on, which, at this point in time, I'm going to say, it would be nice if we could have like 3 years where no one riots, no one causes any political drama. But we're gonna put that a little bit of emotional sentiment aside for a minute. 20,000 people were enough to make the Capitol Police just fan people into the building and evacuate the the people inside. Now that's 20,000 people. All right. 20,000 people, majority of whom were mostly armed with cell phones, by the way. Mostly. I know there's someone who's gonna say, well, what about the people who were breaking stuff and using battering rams and carrying guns? Dude, those people were in the minority, and most of those photos were photoshopped in from other fucking events. I hate to burst your bubble, but a lot of those photos are edited. Look it up. There are a few that aren't, but they're few and far between. Here's my bigger point, though. You're so worried about Donald Trump, or Joe Biden, for that matter, pulling some dictator BS. Alright, that's the number of people that it took for the House of Congress, which is a mite bit smaller than the White House. Actually, they're about roughly the same floor size. Alright, you're worried about that. Okay, here's the thing. I'm going to pop over to another tab that I have set up, which lists off the total population of these here United States. 333.29 million people. Okay, here's the thing. When you do something like that, and people need to understand, alright, the same 20,000 people that quote-unquote stood behind Trump, they don't give two flying shits what his name is or who he is. They care about the agenda and getting things done. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. When people say MAGA Trump 2024 or 2020 or whatever the hell they want to put in there, Trump is just a face. You're not going to stop the movement. And him pulling off some dictator BS that goes against that movement, which it would, by the way. A lot of people don't understand that, but Americans that are for the MAGA movement, we're not some extremist group, and we will turn on one of our own the very second that they go against the agenda, which is secure borders, lower taxes, screw the foreign wars. Basically a lot of stuff that a lot of libertarians are touting about, but some of the stuff isn't. All right, there are some that are like heavily pro-gun, anti-choice. And I say that meaning exactly what it sounds like on abortion. I'm not talking about pro-life. I'm talking about anti-choice, and there is a stark difference there. Pro-life is more center. They are the people who believe safe, legal, and rare. Anti-choice are the ones that are saying not at all. Alright? I mean, those are like your fringe so far right that you just kind of scratch your head like, do you have a brain kind of thing. And there are people in the right that are that way. There are people in the left who are that way. Open borders don't work. You're stupid if you think you do. And anything past like 4 weeks, I argue that anything past conception is quote unquote murder. But that's my personal view. The current legal standard in a lot of states is anything past like 6 weeks, I think it is. I wanted to say 4 weeks at first, but after I thought about it a little bit, I'm pretty sure it's like 6. I'm going to ballpark it at anywhere between 6 to 12 weeks. And that's just a guess. I'm not going to sit here and look up each state's law on this because probably the only good thing to come out of Roe v. Wade was returning states' rights, but it removed a unified perspective on, what was acceptable and what wasn't. And that was... What they did was one of those situations where it was constitutionally correct, which is the good kind of correct. But as far as making things more of a headache for the rest of us, it did. It did, and it will. But if you want to stick to the Constitution, some of these things are going to have to go by the wayside. If you want it to be enforced federally, you have to go through Congress. If you want things to be enforced federally, you have to go through the Senate and have a president sign off on it. That is basically what they said. All right, in a nutshell. They removed Roe v. Wade. They said that much, or it was up to the states to decide what they were going to do. And the Constitution, by the way, the 10th Amendment of the Constitution says that if it's not already in the Constitution, meaning that you don't have an amendment in there, or otherwise, agreed upon between the states and federal law in general, that it belongs to the states. It does. And that's where people get the whole supremacy clause screwed up. The reason why the supremacy clause is argued as accurate when it comes to guns is because it's in the Constitution. Your right to bear arms, your Second Amendment. But the Second Amendment has another protection at the state level too. In most states, like a lot of states have it in their state constitutions that you have a right to bear arms, written to some degree. And there are a few states out there that are both violating their own state constitution and the federal constitution, but that's a whole other video for a whole other time. So here's my point. All right, 30% of those people, that's about 100 million people. That's how many people, roughly, give or take, vote in these United States. Roughly. That is a very rough approximation. Now, I will tell you a little secret about Donald Trump. He knows these numbers, he knows these facts in the back of his head, and every president does in the back of their head, and so does the Secret Service. That's why there's a bullet train under the friggin' White House, an emergency helicopter that can show up at a moment's notice or is parked in the backyard, and another one on the roof. Alright, it's why the White House is one of the most heavily fortified buildings on the planet. But there's a little secret to humanity that people don't realize. Once news gets around that any person who is president tried to become a dictator at one point in time, and I mean, this is like something that's like blatantly obvious, right? It would have to be pretty blatantly obvious because the Secret Service doesn't usually act unless it's something like really, really like upfront. Number one, you have his whole cabinet of people. And I hate to burst your bubble, but not everyone in the room is going to agree with someone doing this. Alright? Just like outright. Banning your rights would be the first thing that they would say out loud. And like half of their cabinet would be gunning for them. That's the first thing. The second thing is they'd say that, and like 90% to almost a full 100% of the Secret Service would be kind of looking at each other like which one's going to be doing it first. All right, that's your first problem. Your third problem is going to be that 100 and something million United States citizens. Now, a lot of you like to say, "Oh, it'll never happen," blah, blah, blah. Announce you're turning the United States into a dictatorship and watch how many people show up with guns. I guarantee you, you will be public enemy in the United States #1. You will not be able to hide. You will not be able to run. In fact, I'd actually argue that if word got out that you were doing that, you would probably have the first time either an attempted or actual assassination against a political figure was considered acceptable in these United States. I guarantee it. It's never happened before for that very reason. Because the second you got someone who did that in a courtroom, all they'd have to do is pull up the video footage of you, let's say hypothetically, someone you know or you are running for president and you do this thing. Well, guess what? You're either in the dirt or running for your life from about 150 million other people, or you're sitting in a courtroom being ready to be tried for treason, sedition, and about 30 other things. That'll make it so you either A, get the capital punishment, or B, never see the light of day again. So really, when you do that, your options are not that great. And a lot of the left like to sit there and pull this Looney Tunes act of, oh, the far right, they're gonna protect Trump, oh my god. Dude, gonna burst your bubble there again. Again. The people who vote in this country are actually in the minority. And what that means, and this is actually a sad part, like, yeah, you could say, well, it goes up to 60%. Historically speaking, it's leaning more towards 30. Every time America, the United States, gets comfortable, the number of people voting slacks quite a bit. And what that means is you get a hot button topic. 9/11, Obama's presidency and some of his BS. Joe Biden, George Bush's crap. You know, you get people out to vote based off of the stuff that they don't like. And that's the important thing. Here lately, we've gone from a country waving our American flags and voting for stuff that we like to being miserable and voting against the stuff that we don't like. And that's another topic for another day, but I think we need to seriously have a cultural conversation about it. We do. But back to the president. There's a reason that the president of the United States will never be a dictator, and that is there are too many people in government. There are too many people that could unseat him if he did. By force if need be. You're talking about the entirety of his cabinet, the entirety of the political establishments in the governmental center of the federal government. You're talking about the fact that the Pentagon would probably be against him at that point. I mean, you're talking about him making himself the enemy of the planet, basically, and thinking that that's gonna happen. You're dumb. You're dumb. You are. Look at the numbers. They say you're stupid. You don't even have to look at the legal consequences. Just look at the number of people that would turn on him. And most of the people waving that MAGA flag, they'll just... if we were talking about him being the leader of a lynch mob, I'll tell you exactly what would happen. It'd be like having a lynch mob that said pro-BLM, And then all of a sudden he started screaming, the pro-white, white power bullshit. It'd be the same damn result. They'd turn on him, find someone else, put them up there. That's exactly what would happen. Are you kidding? It's the most brain dead take I've seen ever done. And the only reason I'm not pulling it up on Twitter right now is because my Twitter is full of anime stuff that I really just don't care to see this morning because I haven't even had my coffee. I watched enough anime episodes of really decent series on TV anyway. I want to see it on my Twitter too. And it's the same thing with politics too. Like, I deal with enough of this shit on YouTube. I don't want to see it on Twitter, which is a hotbed for drama on both ends. Anime and politics. So it's just really hard, apparently, to just go into the hobbies that I actually care about, which is mostly Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, archery, guns, and cars. Oh, and video games. Like, those are my 5 hobbies in a nutshell. There are other hobbies. I like to go hiking, camping, and yada yada yada, but, like, for whatever reason, and I don't know how to fix it because I'm relatively new to Twitter, like, within the last 2 months, I don't know how to change my likes and dislikes and interests and disinterests, so that way I stop seeing so much political jargon and start seeing more of what I want to see. Now, this is not black-pilling, white-pilling, or even promoting any kind of, like, treasonous insurrection or anything like that, by the way, this video. I'm just stating a fact of numbers here. In fact, I do support Donald Trump. I think he'd be great for a second term. I think he's got a lot of the right policy ideas. I think the biggest problem he's going to run into is that the establishment is going to be sitting there telling him to screw off. You're not going to get anything done for 4 years. But I'm going to tell you where that's going to be a good thing, because they're not going to get anything done either for 4 years, which means that you might see the taxes go back down, the gas prices might go back down, but for the most part, we'd be pretty much left alone. All right, and then it would go back to the old anti-Trump, anti-Republican riots in the streets because they want to, because they didn't get their way during an election, which is, by the way, just as insurrectionist, this is January 6th. I'm going to burst your bubble on that one, too. You're going to sit there and say, oh, well, they didn't do it in the Capitol. No, but they did it in far more places across the country than just one. At least with one, you can contain it and deal with it. They did it at such a broad scale, and I have very rarely have I heard of a single person being charged in these riots and actually see a day in prison. J6, you have. So, you want to talk about a dual standard of justice? There it is. There's your double standard. Alright? That right there needs to be stopped in a nutshell, and I think the Supreme Court should preemptively put the boot down and say, hey, no, if you're going to be arresting these people for this, you need to be arresting these people for it as well. Because it's literally the same thing. Riots, violent riots where you burn people's buildings down, the people doing the burning need to be held accountable just as much as the J6 people do. Hot take, you don't like it too bad, it's the reality of equal protection under the law. Now, I don't want people getting this twisted. Again, this video is not a call to arms. If I did that, it would not be on YouTube, number one, because it'd be censored into oblivion, number two, it'd be easily traceable, and number three, I have no reason to do that. I'm a fat fucking gamer, are you kidding? You're gonna have a hard time getting me up to get my own friggin' donut, let alone anything else. The only reason that I conceal carry is for my self-defense and the defense of my family when I'm going out for the day with my family. Are you kidding? Because it's like the lady from Alien vs. Predator said about the condom thing. It's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. That's the philosophy of the gun. Literally, in a nutshell. Right? And yeah, you have some bad actors out there. You have some potentially good actors that turn into bad actors because of mental stresses or whatever. You know, we saw that right here in Maine at one point. And God rest everyone's souls who was regrettably a victim of that individual, and I did make a video about this before. But literally this person had like 3 different times that he could have been prevented from doing this thing legally speaking, according to our own laws in this state and abroad, he could have been stopped, but he wasn't, which shows that the system just failed. And it happens, you know. This was the guy that slipped between the cracks. All right. And that's what was really jarring for the state of Maine, is that it was the one time that we've had a shooting of this magnitude happen, and probably the only time. I don't think we've had one in recent history in our state. I would have to actually look up the historical data on it to see how many we've had in the state of Maine that were actually to this magnitude. I don't think most shootings in the state of Maine exceed 2 people, and most of those are homicide self-deletion situations. They're not. Yeah, a lot of them are. Again, I'd have to look into it more, but I'm pretty sure most of ours are what we used to call back in the day cabin fever events, because it was mostly just people who got snowed into their house for like 3 or 4 months at a time, couldn't leave for any reason, and they go stir crazy. A lot of people further north used to call it that, as kind of a bad pun on that, and it was a tragic thing that they shouldn't be joking about, but like that's what it was called. You know. But anyway, you're talking about. I have a dispute actually with the whole January 6th narrative. All right. You're talking about the most heavily armed section of the American population are Trump supporters. You don't believe me? Look up the statistics. Most of the people who voted for Donald Trump are also heavily armed, like with more than just a sidearm, mind you. We're talking rifles, shotguns, stuff that you probably shouldn't have in some cases. And I don't know. I when it comes to guns, I try to stay in my lane a little bit. I own what I own. Brandon Herrera owns what he owns. Matt owns just about every kind of gun under the planet. That's Demolition Ranch, by the way. Go look those guys up. They're pretty good stuff. Scott from Kentucky Ballistics and the rest of them. Like, once you get into, like, pick, like, 2 or 3 of them, once you start watching their videos, a lot more will start showing up. Like, Administrative Results, Grand Thumb, Tundra Tactical. Like, once you start down the GunTuber rabbit hole, it doesn't stop with just like 2 or 3. There's actually like quite a few of them, and a lot of them are actually really good watch. You know, really good to watch, really good stuff. In fact, my diet of what I watch on YouTube is largely those guys, Team APS for my Yu-Gi-Oh card stuff, and SEMO, and a couple others on that, and well, it used to be Scott on cars, Scott the car guy, and then it shifted off to like a few other channels too. I can't name them offhand because my brain fog, no coffee. And yes, I did look these stats up before I did this video, before I even had a cup of coffee, which I'm gonna go get here in about 10 minutes. Here's my problem with the narrative of the dictator in the United States. It's going to require you to you're going to have to turn your whole cabinet into the direction of dictatorship. You're going to have to turn the entire political establishment in the United States towards the dictatorship. You then have to turn the Supreme Court and the military, all branches of the military, into the dictatorship. Then you're going to have to do your local law enforcement agencies, state-level governments and law enforcement agencies. And then you're going to have to convince at least half of the population of the United States that that's the way the United States is going. That's what it's going to require. And if you think Donald Trump has anywhere near that support, if you think Joe Biden has anywhere near that support, or any other candidate, you haven't been paying attention and you're mentally just not there. Like, The facts are so blatantly obvious that no one running for president in this election is going to be a dictator. It's impossible. You can't friggin' do it. Number one, if anything that I mentioned before, that would be required. These would be the steps required to physically mount enough force to make it happen. If you think that any amount of that would go the way that the person thought it would, you're wrong. Like, this person would literally have to have some kind of magical demonic hold over like 75% of the country just to make it happen, and that's assuming the rule of the 25 remaining percent doesn't kick in. Because there is a rule about insurrections and revolutions. All it takes is 10 to 20% of your population. Alright? So that's assuming that doesn't kick in. So you're talking about so many legal, non-legal, numerical, statistical safeguards that are just against anyone being a dictator in this country, and you think Donald Trump's going to be a dictator. You're brain dead. Get off Twitter. Go touch grass. Literally, go touch flippin' grass. Alright? Because if you think that the 20,000 people in the Capitol at that point in time were enough to foment a sizable rebellion to where dictatorships are going to happen, and yes, I'm surfing through my stuff real quick. If you think that is going to be enough to foment any kind of rebellion against the United States government or the Constitution, which is what a lot of people on the right and the left claim they're protecting, you're brain dead. You are brain dead. I don't know how many more times I can say that in a video with proven facts right here as to how dumb you are. But I think that's going to wrap this one up. I really do, because I don't think this is worth talking about too much more. And I do appreciate comments in this comment section below on this particular topic. And you know what? YouTube can go right on ahead and add their context. And I will debate their context, as no one cares what YouTube has to say about anything anymore. They are a corporation that owns a video hosting platform. Their political opinions and their statistically cherry-picked facts don't matter to me, or most of the people like me. And I think it's time people said that. You don't matter. You matter as far as allowing us to host our video channels. That's it. That's it. And I could get banned for saying that, but you know what? That's the facts. Them's the facts there, sweetheart. You might not like what we're saying, but there it is. And, most people don't even read your little context boxes, by the way. Just figured I'd throw that out there. 90% of people who see that wish that it had a close button, because we're sick of seeing it. You know, it's probably one of the bigger detractors, other than the friggin' ads everywhere on the platform. But I understand you need ad revenue to pay people, so I'm okay with the ads in that perspective. It's just I think there's too many of them. That's my opinion. I actually think banner ads would work better than in-video ads. I really do. Like, a lot of people don't agree with that concept, but I think having a Charmin toilet paper banner ad would be better than having a severely interrupting to a video. You know, halfway through a video you get an ad read, or not an ad read, but an ad pop up, and just like cut someone off when they're trying to say something. But that's my opinion. That's my take. Hopefully everyone has a marvelous day on this 12th of January 2024. This has been Zero. Keep it peaceful, keep it safe, and keep it happy. That's the way I look at it. But also keep it constitutional. Alright, peace out.